see what goes on. Nope, IG is still dead. Unreal. I'm so sad about that. I'm really having issues with Instagram. But hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. I've got a video that I was interested in watching. More of the debate from Destiny and Glenn Greenwald. This one's cut off into an hour section. It's Michael Haskey. It's basically just covering, is Donald Trump fit to be president? And I think that's debatable. It's definitely debatable, especially when you consider how demented the current president is. For you to say that Donald Trump is worse off than Joe Biden, it's a debate, man, and I want to see how this goes because I have a feeling that, Destiny is going to have some good examples of all the crazy shit that Donald Trump has done that makes him unfit to be president. So this should be a good video to watch, I'm thinking. So IG isn't working. We'll go ahead and just pull up YouTube on that page.
We can walk through this. We can walk through this very simple.
Oh shit. God, so many buttons to press. Just give me the full screen button. Okay?
Can you specifically respond to the point that Glenn made about the videos?
It's just bullshit. It's literally, I don't know. That's like a guy telling you that, yesterday they saw UFOs making crop circles.
You're an absolute liar, Destiny, or you have no idea what you're talking about. Mike Johnson is the one who released all the videos. How do you not know that?
We can walk through this. We can walk through this. We can walk through this very simply. We can walk through this so simply. It's such an easy and simple thing, okay? So why do we bring up that some police officers let people into the building? There is only one of two possible reasons to bring them up. One is to say that, well, the protesters weren't actually violent because they were let in, but we know that's false because we got video evidence proving otherwise. And the second is if you want to allege a much larger conspiracy, that the police were actually working to allow protesters or rioters into the building, of which there's absolutely no evidence for it. Other than that, the only reason... Let me respond! Let me explain the videos! I'm trying to explain it. Other than those two reasons, there is absolutely no reason to reference this video footage. Everybody knows that there were times, even before Mike Johnson, even before Tucker Carlson, we all...
Hey, why not Taco? Good afternoon, Token Tony Z. Someone tried to tell me that only conservative men have a problem with Taylor Swift on the NFL. Lol. 17.9 million viewers and none are liberals or women. No, I got a problem with Taylor Swift. It's too much. I don't care about her. I'm not a fan. It doesn't do anything for me. And if I was a football fan, the last thing I want to do is follow Taylor Swift while I want to see my football team play. And I don't even like sports anymore. But fuck Taylor Swift. Now, on the other hand, on the other side of that, a whole bunch of Trump-supporting Republican cunts are going to cry like little bitches if the Kansas City Chiefs win. So I'm a San Francisco fan, actually. On those two teams, I've got way more of an allegiance to San Francisco, being that I lived in Lake County, which is 2 hours away from San Francisco, for 12 years, right? I got way more allegiance. I had a lot of friends in California who's San Fran friends. And because of that, I was like, yeah, and the whole Taylor Swift thing, we want to see Taylor Swift get beat, right? That's what I was thinking. But now I'm thinking... But wouldn't I rather see a whole bunch of Republicans get butthurt over Kansas City winning? So go Kansas City. That's where I'm at. Fuck all the Republicans. Hey man, she's just some singer. Maybe get over it. She's just some singer, okay? She's a woman. She's fallen in love with a football player. They make a great couple. I think they'll have great little babies and they'll be very talented babies, and they're gonna have lots of money, and they're gonna be like the hottest couple in Hollywood. I don't fucking care. Good for them. Congratulations. I'm sure it's gonna do a lot of good for a lot of people. Doesn't concern me, but if it's going to make a whole bunch of Ben Shapiro type people and Steven Crowder type people all pissed off and crying and saying it's a conspiracy and everything, I'm like, bravo! Bravo! Please bring it on. I am so ready for that. So go Kansas City, go Taylor Swift. Let me see a whole bunch of Republicans fucking cry like little bitches over Taylor Swift, because just think about what a pussy you'd have to be to make Taylor Swift make you cry. And they're all crying right now as we speak. They're all crying about it. What kind of a pussy you gotta be to, get over it. Who fucking cares? I mean, was Kansas City or San Francisco either of your teams? I mean, let's just get down to brass tacks. You know, my real team is the Miami Dolphins ever since I was a little baby. So was it really, are you really have allegiance to either of these teams? Do you really care? Or are you just a Republican who's looking for an excuse to hate on women? Or to hate on, you know, the LGBTQ community or the Biden administration or whatever the fuck you want to hate on? You know, don't let them feed red meat to your hate. You know, just ignore that shit. That's what I say, why not taco? What do you say about it, why not taco? You got me all spun up. What do you got to say? Anything? Let me know.
Knew that there was footage of cops leading people in some places around the inside of the Capitol building. People do this with riots all the time. We know that they were understaffed. We know they didn't have enough people to deal with all of the protesters or rioters that were in the building. And we know that lawmakers were being shuffled through the back, trying to make sure that they were in secured areas that protesters weren't. So the idea that it's somehow strange or inconceivable that police officers were leading people into more defensible areas of the building just doesn't make any sense.
And I love how Glenn's being completely quiet right now. I guarantee you, he's not hearing a single thing that Destiny just said, because Destiny made nothing but sense. Let's hear what Glenn's rebuttal is going to be to all that, because all that made perfect sense.
I can ask very simply, what is the point of saying that there are videos of police officers?
Let's get ready to shing him in, shall we?
What's the point of bringing that up? What do you
want to
testing it?
shing him in?
This is like, you are the most binary thing I've ever heard. You begin every sentence by proclaiming it is either one or two, and there's no third or fourth or fifth.
Sure, what's 3, 4, 5?
Neither of those two choices is my argument. The reason why it matters is twofold. Number one is it demonstrates that from the start of all of this, the media and Democrats knew that what had happened was nowhere near sufficiently serious in order to present it as some sort of an insurrectionary threat to the United States. That was why the Brian Sicknick lie was important. That was why it was so important to conceal these videos. That's why it took Mike Johnson, the Republicans, taking over the House and being willing to release all the videos, not just the part that was handpicked for us by Adam Schiff and Liz Cheney, to get the real story. The second part is that the reason it's relevant is not because it proves that none of the protesters used violence. I will say probably for the 8th time that there were a small number, a minority of people who were at the Capitol and who entered the Capitol who used violence. They used violence against police officers. They attacked police officers with physical force. Some police officers were injured, pretty much like happens in every protest that is turned into a riot. But what it demonstrates is that even though you have to try and reach for this maximum number, 2,000 people who entered the Capitol, the vast majority of them were not part of any premeditated plan to overthrow the U.S. government.
Really? How many of those people took part in the chant, "Stop the steal, hang Mike Pence"? How many of them were saying those things, Glenn? Because if they were singing the chant, that was the plan. We're going to march down to the Capitol and stop the steal on January 6th, the day of the vote verification. Yeah, that was it. That was the plan, Glenn. Destiny, jump all over him, please. Get him. Get him, Destiny. Sick him. Sick him, Destiny. Get him.
Enter the building. The vast majority of them were non-violent, and that is the reason why
go, Destiny.
Only a small percentage of them have been accused
Jump
of
in there,
violence.
Destiny.
And the reason that matters is it goes to the question of the magnitude or the extent of the actual threat that January 6th posed to the American Republic and to our system of government, which was extremely trivial and minor, both in the context of
You're with me on that. Let's go, Kansas City! Go, Kansas City! Ah! I got everybody for Kansas City. You know why? You know why?
And none of these points even make sense. So the first thing you say is...
Because it makes perfect sense, right? It does, right? And let all those guys who hate women, all those sexist guys out there, cry when you know, she goes out in halftime and does whatever they're going to do. And let them just cry and go to Fox News for their sympathy. And nothing would make me happier than ruining a bunch of Republicans' Super Bowl Sunday. That would make me happy. So go Kansas City.
The media and Democrats knew what happened.
And I don't even want the Democrats to win. I'm just like, I just want Republicans to sulk.
Glenn, I know you're scared of the facts, but that's okay.
No law regarding cannabis. Cheers, everybody. Cheers. I see that.
Let's be brave, okay? So you said that it demonstrates that the media and the Democrats knew what happened wasn't sufficiently serious. That was the first thing we brought up. How does the release of the videos make the event less serious? Was there not a delaying of the certification of the vote? Were there not thousands of people inside the Capitol? Did they not break in to get there?
There weren't thousands of people inside the Capitol. You yourself put the maximum number at 2,000.
What does 1,000 mean, Glenn? Hold on. Maybe English might be your second language. I'm trying to figure out. What does 1,000 mean? Thousands. 2,000 is thousands. There were I'll say 2,000 makes me better.
And
so we know that there
were. That's the maximum number. What the videos show is that at least a significant number of those people did not use violence in order to enter the Capitol. They walked in peacefully and were led
if somebody breaks into the building, the people that come in afterwards, of course, are coming in peacefully in any riot situation like that.
Led in by the police.
The police are not, but the initial entry into the Capitol was a break-in.
Yes, a small percentage of people on January 6th.
But Glenn, what Destiny's trying to say is that the first people who will come in will do the violence, and the rest of the people will just follow them in and won't.
Thank you, moderator, for breaking in and shutting Glenn up for a second. Wow, a moderator who's actually going to moderate. That's refreshing.
Do all the violence. So the first person will.
It's like saying 1,000 people going through a broken door and saying, well, only one guy broke down the door. 1,000 people were trespassing through a broken door. Like, do you think the cops that were leading them around the Capitol building?
Do you know how many political protests have involved?
Oh my God, the pivot, the whataboutism.
None
of them try to prevent the execution of the election. That's why this is a historic event. You admitted as much. Nobody's delayed.
And this too. There's no reason other than to subvert the election to be down there at the Capitol. There was absolutely no other reason to be there except to subvert the vote. And if you felt like you were there to subvert the vote, then you felt like you were breaking the law. And every single one of those people that was being supportive and saying stop the steal, which was a call to action to break the law, are guilty of just the support and comfort that you gave people who were committing an insurrection. You're guilty too. Every single one of them. You marched down there with those people unless you were there silently documenting the whole thing. And those people, I give them full credit and I would absolve them of any wrongdoing. Even if they're hardcore Trump-supporting right-wingers. As long as they were in there silent and documenting it, I'm okay with them, and they should all get a pass because thanks to them, we all got to see the insanity of Trump supporters and what they're capable of doing when Trump lathers them up.
The certification of a vote like this before, and nobody.
It was delayed by 3 hours. It happened on the same day as it was scheduled to happen.
Buddy, cheers, bro. Crispy Cat, cheers. Craig Allen, cheers. Token Tony Z, cheers.
And he said only a couple of hundred
lifts the
people,
trophy above her
maybe
head.
only 100 people will actually be violent. Destiny said it's only the first 100 people that will go through. They will do the violence, and everyone else will be trespassing. Does that make sense, or what's your thoughts on that?
No, because if that crowd were actually there to overthrow the government of the United States or to prevent a peaceful transition of power, they would not have marched in peacefully to the White House when the...
That's bullshit. That just by them being there, their very presence was trying to subvert what was going on. So they don't have to throw hands. They don't have to have weapons. All they had to do was be there and intimidate the government, which is what they did. They broke into the house and intimidated. Let me ask Glenn this. Hey, Glenn, you and your boyfriend are sitting around enjoying a nice dinner, and 30 people break through your front door and come in your living room and just sit down and make themselves at home. Well, you're in the kitchen or you're in the breakfast area, the nook, and you and your husband are sitting there having a very nice evening. And all of a sudden, 30 people just come in your home and sit down. And they weren't violent, Glenn, but wasn't that somehow an affront to your freedom? Wasn't that subverting your evening, your quiet evening with your husband, Glenn? You're a fucking idiot if you can't see the similarity between those two situations. You're an idiot, Glenn, or you're just so far up Donald Trump's dick hole that you just can't fucking let this shit go. And that's what I'm signing for. You're looking down the road at a Trump presidency is what you're hoping for? And man, just for cunts like you, I hope it doesn't fucking happen. So that you don't get your little cash cow for 4 fucking years. You fucking suck up, brown-nosing cunt bitch. Daniel Andrews, they weren't violent, but they weren't invited. They weren't violent, Daniel. The majority of people there were not violent. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, but there were just too many of them that were violent and broke windows and did damage and were calling for the hanging of the vice president and was calling for the subversion of democracy in the United States by chanting "Stop the Steal." How many of them chanted the word "Stop the Steal"? How many of them held the sign that said "Stop the Steal"? Or said the election was stolen? You know? Because if you're down there and you're claiming the election was stolen, you're fucking guilty of supporting the insurrection, which occurred.
Police let them in. And
I mean, a big major point is, yeah, so they weren't organized and they were a fucking failure. Luckily, it was still an insurrection. It was an attempted one. They call that an attempted coup. Luckily, it was denied. It was stopped. But, you know, for 3 hours, you know, it could have gone either way. If they had gotten through that door, who knows what would have happened next? Where Ashley Babbitt got shot.
And marched peacefully out of the Capitol when it was time
Oh,
for them to go.
did you guys hear about the King of England? He's got cancer. And the cunts over there in the fucking palace, they don't want to fucking tell you what kind of cancer it is, you know, because fuck all of you. Why should you know? Why? So you can go get screened for exactly what he's got? Oh no, fuck all of you. So literally the King of England has cancer. Do you guys know about that? They care about people so much they won't even tell you what kind of cancer it is. That he was just in there, got something removed.
Which is exactly what happened. There was no violence even needed to subdue this riot or to put an end to it.
King Charles.
What it shows is that the vast majority of people there were peaceful protesters. They were absolutely people who believed that the election was the byproduct of fraud. They wanted their voices to be heard in Congress. They wanted the Congress to exercise what their constitutional right was in the view of many people, which was to hear claims of fraud, which is what happened in 2016 and in 2004 and in 2000. The Congress, including members of Congress, objected to the certification of votes. They most definitely were exercising their constitutional rights to protest the 2020 election, based on the view that
they're exercising their constitutional rights.
Yes. Oh, no, I agree with everything he just
Exactly.
said. They thought the election was fraud, and so they showed up to try to protest the results of the election. And they did
Correct.
it with violence. Yes, that's called an insurrection.
That's
When
called
you
an
don't like how the
insurrection.
election goes, and you
Oh.
show up to have these
Oh,
riots and try to make it so
no.
it doesn't happen.
Boom. Oh, Glenn, you just got owned by Destiny, and I knew it wasn't going to take long. Dude, that was an atomic bomb. And look at what Glenn's response is, to grab his cup of coffee and start taking a sip. Because all he can do is talk over Destiny right now. He just got destroyed. So Glenn literally describes the day, and Destiny finishes with, and that's the definition of an insurrection. Thank you. I wonder when they're going to get into whether Donald Trump is fit enough to be president. That's what I want to see. You heard he was sick, Michael Haskey?
That's an insurrection, yes.
There were a tiny number of people.
It doesn't matter the
unarmed.
number. What when you pivot to irrelevant facts like this, there were a tiny number of people. That doesn't matter. It might have been 100. It might have been 2,000.
Right,
It doesn't
exactly.
Matter what the tiny number
He
means.
does
It's
all
not
of
that.
this comparing to other things. It doesn't matter. It fits the definition, and that's the point. And legally, it fits the definition, and that's what Donald Trump has to worry about. Because legally, if this gets proven to be a fact, Donald Trump goes to jail. Donald Trump goes to prison. And he might be president. People might just vote for him because it's a joke that the president of the United States is locked up in a cell. And that might just be fucking awesome. You know what? I would support a Donald Trump prison presidency. I would. As long as he goes to prison, and it's for, the rest of his life, which he fucking deserves, and which is what I hope he gets. Prison for the rest of his life. If they just do it, we're adding a year for every person you fucked over. Just 1 year, okay? We're only going to add 1 year for every single person that you've ever fucked over. Just 1 year. It'd be he's gone. He's, 30, 40, 100, 200. How many? How many people has he fucked? How many families were fucked by contractors that we heard about on this morning show? Am I right? Boy, oh boy, we saw a video on this morning show. If you missed it, guys, I hope most of you have seen it by now. It's a contractor that was talking about how Donald Trump screwed his friends over. And people killed themselves over it. Sad. Other people almost lost their businesses, their livelihoods, their will to live.
It does matter in terms of the gravity of this threat. We began the discussion by your conceding.
That's why this is a good follow-up to that.
A number of people, like 2 or 3.
2 or 3.
Very difficult to call it an insurrection. So for me,
and yet 500 people was enough to call it the Whiskey Rebellion, even though those 500 men had no chance of taking over the federal government. That was called a whole rebellion, which is more serious than an insurrection. History and legal experts and the Constitution does not agree with you, Glenn. You are on an island.
You're on an island.
This idea that you constantly
again, another death blow by destiny.
And nobody agrees with me. In what fucking world are you living in?
Even in the U.S. Congress, the majority of people.
So now, Glenn Greenwald has now started to curse. So he's completely lost his shit. He's lost this debate, and he can feel it, and he's lashing out at Destiny, throwing insults at him, and Destiny doesn't deserve that. Let's see what the moderator says.
When the Senate voted that it was an insurrection, the majority of them, not a supermajority of it. So even in the Congress, they agreed with me. Yes.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but the person that you claim led this insurrection and that everybody agrees was an insurrection is currently leading in all presidential polls to be the next president because Americans actually don't see it the way you see it.
That doesn't matter, Glenn. It doesn't matter how people see it. There was a time, Glenn, when the entire country believed that slavery was okay. There was a time, Glenn, when the entire country hated homosexuals. What do you think about that, Glenn? Idiot.
Another person who doesn't see it the way you see it is Jack Smith, who had the opportunity to charge Donald Trump with insurrection and chose not to. So
that's a good argument. If he's really popular, it can't be an insurrection,
I guess. To put at the beginning of your YouTube video, where you're going to be like, everybody agrees with me, you're on an island. As though I'm the only one who makes these arguments. There are millions of people who think what you're saying is bullshit, Destiny.
Millions of people.
How insulated you are.
Most importantly, Donald Trump. Right, Glenn? And you want Donald Trump to know that you're there supporting his lies. However you can. You're such a sellout, bro. You're not a news person anymore, Glenn. Now you're just some gay dude on the internet that doesn't make any fucking sense anymore. That's all you are, bro. That's all you got. You're nothing.
Glenn, can we go back straight to the without the insults, but can we go straight back to the beginning?
I'm sorry, moderator. I'll refrain.
With trying to define what insurrection meant. I think we lost that way. So, Glenn, you described insurrection as something that has a potential to overthrow.
Now I say this. This moronic moderator just told them that they're going to debate the definition of a word. Does this sound familiar, guys? This is not a debate. The definition is what we all agree to. It's the definition of the word. It's the definition of the term. It's written down in dictionaries. It can be looked up, referenced, and fucking shoved in your fucking face. So hey, pencil dick. There's nothing to fucking confirm. There's nothing to debate. Open the dictionary. Google that shit. Why are you having them debate the definition of a word? You're such an idiot. You're a horrible moderator. I thought you were a good moderator. You suck. Listen to this moron.
Trying to define what insurrection meant. I think we lost that way.
Everybody agrees with me. You're on an island. As though I'm the only one who makes these arguments. There are millions of people who think what you're saying is bullshit, Destiny.
Yeah, he sounds like such a little bitch ass, doesn't he? Destiny.
Glenn,
shows how insulated you are.
Glenn, can we go back straight to the without the insults, but can we go straight back to the beginning of the debate, which is we started off with trying to define what insurrection meant.
Why? 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 Why are you trying to define anything that's already got a definition? The word has a definition, and you know what purpose it serves? so that when someone like Donald Trump goes to court for it, we understand what he's guilty of, you fucking cunt. If lawyers want to go in there and argue with the judge over the definition of the word, you know what the judge should do? Hey, both of you shut the fuck up. I got the definition right here. All right, on my fucking cell phone, I looked it up. It's right here. Donald Trump's guilty of this. Now fucking argue your cases and fucking sit the fuck down. Court's in session. I should be a judge. I did that good, didn't I? I needed a gavel.
We lost that.
The court is in session. The verdict is in. No appeal on the docket today. Just my own sin. The wall's cold and pale. This cage made of steel. Alone in the hell, I turn low and I drop and kneel. Silence now the sound, my breath the only motion around. Demons cluttering around, my face showing no emotion. And then the song, fucking dude, that's goddamn Creed. That's Creed, man. Motherfucker lives right down the street. That's some Creed. I used to know that song, but I forgot it. It's in drop D. I totally forgot how to play the song. So let's go back to the little bitch fest over here. I guess we're going to debate the definition of a word, everybody. So once again, I'm just going to say it again if you're not catching what I'm saying about that. Debating words is stupid. We already know the answer to what the word is. So why would you debate the definition of a word if it's already written down? It's just dumb. It's like debating whether or not I've got salt and pepper hair. No, he's just got white hair. No, he's got brown hair. What are you guys? Are you both fucking idiots? Of course I'm salt and pepper. Jeez, fucking A, really? You can't tell my hair? By looking at it? You're going to argue that? I got a little bit of this. I got a little bit of that. What?
Wait. So, Glenn, you described insurrection as something that has a potential to overthrow
a serious threat to the system of law and order, and to the stability of power in that country. That's what I think an insurrection or a coup is.
Destiny, would you agree with that?
Basically, yeah. Public use of force in order by a group of people in order to hinder or prevent the execution of the Constitution of the United States. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so we keep going back to this, but what happened on January 6th? It delayed it for a couple of hours. Was that trying to overthrow democracy? Was that how does that qualify to be an insurrection?
The reason why it qualifies is because, as Glenn accurately pointed out, the reason why the people were there.
That delay that they enforced was exactly what they were trying to achieve. That's exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to subvert the transition of power. Illegally.
They thought the election had been stolen from them.
And they achieved it for 3 hours.
They were chanting 1776, and they were going down with the idea that Vice President Pence would unilaterally overturn the election.
Now, if you watch the video, you'll hear them chanting "Stop the Steal." And they're carrying signs that say that. And for some reason, no one ever says that. Destiny, no one. And if he would just say that, that's the call to action. That's literally what incites the riot. Is you must go down there. We must stop the steal. I've gotten into it plenty of times on this show. I'm not going to get into it again, but I've already defined why that term, "stop the steal," that phrase incriminates Donald Trump beyond the shadow of a doubt, that those people did exactly what he wanted them to do. And that's why he did nothing while they were doing it.
That they thought was done fraudulently in order to soft coup Donald Trump back into power as the rightful leader in contravention of what the Congress was supposed to do, which was the certification of the electoral votes. That was Congress's job. They were there on January 6th, specifically that day, because Donald Trump asked them to be there. They went to the Capitol grounds immediately after his speech because Donald Trump told them to go there.
Yes.
They broke into the Capitol building because they thought that they could delay the certification of the vote.
Yep.
And then when they were there, they only left when Donald Trump told them to. And a lot of them had said in much, in all of their convictions, that they were waiting for his orders to go.
Yeah, I know. Glenn Greenwald is a fucking idiot. I know Glensky. Glenn Greenwald, he's a fucking idiot.
Home, which his first two tweets weren't. They were encouragement to continue rioting, and they continue to do so even an hour after Donald Trump, the one who's authorized to deploy the National Guard to the Capitol grounds, sat and watched them do it even an hour after finding out that Ashley Babbitt had died. Again, if you want to say that 2 people is an insurrection, not sure, that's fine. But 2,000 is way over wherever either of us would reasonably draw the line.
I think we've gone over sufficiently the amount of people who were actually there.
No, actually, I think that I'm not the moron.
Engaging in violence of any kind with any kind of an insurrectionary intent, which is the, I'll be generous and say that 100 or 120 of them were being. But can I just establish a point of agreement, because I've never heard you actually acknowledge that this was true, that in this speech you're trying to depict these people as kind of like mindless zombies who just follow the orders of Donald Trump and do whatever he instructs them to do. Do you agree that, and can you acknowledge that in his speech there was
Dude, I do. I call myself a moron all the time, but I'm smart enough to block you from my live stream.
time and one time only where he addressed the question of whether or not violence should be used at that protest they were going to at the Capitol, and when addressing that on one occasion he told them to go there and protest peacefully? Is that something you acknowledge is what he told them?
So I would acknowledge that. However, on my YouTube channel, we try to engage in serious political analysis. So when I'm engaging in serious
You're
political,
well known for that.
I know, yeah, as are you. I got.
Shut up, Glenn. You're a fucking asshole, and you're bought, and you're fucking, your goddamn tongue is so far up Donald Trump's ass. You could tell us what the kind of baby food they gave him when he was a fucking little run-ass baby bitch like you.
Yes. While we're engaged in serious political analysis, when we're looking at what is actually going on or what's in the minds of people, I would never in my entire life imagine cutting one sentence out of an hour-long speech to try to determine what the actual motivation of that speech was. What I would do is I would look at the totality of the speech. It's possible you've never watched it before because you only read Twitter headlines, maybe. And I would also look at the actions that happened after of both the protesters and the guy who incited the speech to see, what were the actual intentions of what was going on. In that speech, Donald Trump multiple times made allusions to the fact that our democracy was under threat, that our election had been stolen, that Congress was failing the people to act in how they should, and that Vice President Pence was the last hope of saving our republic, and that if you don't fight like hell, they're going to steal your country from you. So I also know that Donald Trump was informed by the Secret Service that there were people trying to get into the protest, or trying to get into his ellipse speech, that were literally armed and had guns. The Secret Service said, we can't let them in. Donald Trump said, let them in. They're my friends. I love these people. That's fine. And I also know that after the speech, when Donald Trump told everybody to march to the Capitol, when they were marching, chanting rebellious slogans. They were saying 1776. They were looking to have a rebellion because, as you said, they thought the election was stolen. When they got there and Vice President Pence didn't unilaterally toss the election, what did they do? They said, hang Pence, hang Pence, hang Pence. Pence himself called Trump to complain about this. Trump didn't check in on him a single time that entire day because he was so upset that Pence wouldn't unilaterally toss the election. So when I look at the totality of the events, am I here to say that because he said march to the protest peacefully, that means that it was peaceful? If that was the case, then as soon as Donald Trump saw violence, you know what he would have done? Donald Trump would have made a phone call and he would have said, Miller, why is the National Guard not there right now? What's going on? My daughter-in-law is talking to me, everybody, or my daughter's talking to me, my chief of staff is talking to me, my lawyers are talking to me, people from Congress are calling me, everybody's calling me saying violence happening. Why aren't you guys stopping it? He didn't do that. Instead, what he did was he had a 2-minute conversation with Giuliani, and then Giuliani started ringing up all these congressmen saying, hey, don't you think you guys should delay the vote? Give us 10 days, right? What is that? Capitalizing on violence to circumvent the constitutional transfer of power from one president to the next, also known as an insurrection. It's so clean and it's so easy, and none of the facts that I just gave, by the way, Glenn will not contest a single one of them.
It's so clean and it's so easy. Destiny is fucking shooting an assault rifle in Glenn's face right now, just of knowledge and facts. He does so much background work on this shit so that he could come in and destroy people like this. Let's see how Glenn responds.
Even though all of those facts are in the politically partisan J6 committee. How crazy is that?
Tell me when you're done talking, and I will immediately contest.
Glenn, can you particularly respond to this? Glenn, can you respond to those, particularly the two things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Number one, Trump.
I'm very surprised that your incredibly substantive discussion on a YouTube channel led to a conclusion that was the most negative possible about a Republican candidate. That would be completely unpredictable. But I'm going to tell you why, in everything that you just said, we can get back to the question and be able to answer the question of why it is that Jack Smith did not actually charge Donald Trump with doing what you claim he did, which, had he done, would have been a very serious crime, and I think he should have been charged for. The reason is because in what Donald Trump actually said, as opposed to all the secret meaning that you and your Democratic Party community believe he intended to convey through very banal political slogans like "go fight like hell," is the only thing he actually told them was that they should go and march there and be peaceful when they went and protested. And you know what? The vast majority of people who marched to the Capitol did exactly what Donald Trump told them to do, which was to be peaceful. There were let's say 10,000 or 15,000 people outside the Capitol, and you said before they were yelling, which actually is constitutionally permissible and protected. You're actually allowed to yell at politicians when you're angry about what you perceive to be a political injustice. Of those...
Yeah, you're allowed to do what Ashley Babbitt did and beat on their fucking chamber door like a fucking baboon. You know, is that cool too, Glenn? You fucking idiot. Is that part of the allowed free speech?
Small percentage actually entered the Capitol, and of those, a very small number of people used non-fatal violence against police officers, something that we had watched occur for months through the summer and into the fall of 2020, over and over and over and over again, when thousands of Americans were injured as part of a nationwide protest movement that repeatedly ended up engaged with the protesters engaging in violence against the police. This, as I said before, I don't regard the Black Lives Matter movement as an insurrectionary movement. I would never call it a coup. But by every metric, it would be so much easier to make that case about the Black Lives Matter movement than it would be about January 6th, in large part, because the number of people actually involved in trying to use violence was very small. Even the people who use violence were not engaged in even the kind of violence that you often expect, which is, again, pulling out guns, shooting people. There was none of that. That's why nobody died on January 6th except for 4 pro-Trump protesters. So, yes, there was violence on January 6th. Yes, they were there because they believed that the election was stolen. Yes, they ended up delaying this ceremonial ministerial process by a grand total of 2 hours or 2.5 hours. But while it was a riot perpetrated by a small number of people, it never got even close to threatening the levers of power of the United States, the most militarized country on the planet. And that is why it is an absolute joke to try and put it up there with the major historical events of the United States, let alone the kinds of coups or attempted coups that take place all around the world that always involve universes greater levels of violence and threats to the status quo than January 6th did.
Wait, so Destiny, just before you continue, I want to go back to what you said because I think it's really important.
When are we going to get to Donald Trump? I can't wait. I'm so worked up, bro.
If they would have managed to kill like one lawmaker, would you call it an insurrection?
We're 18 minutes in.
Killed like Nancy Pelosi, because the government could still continue, like everything could still go on just fine.
I mean, I would need some context. Like, was it one rogue guy, like, who found Nancy Pelosi and shot her? Was it, like, a huge group of thousands of people dragging her out and hanging her in the public square while the crowd cheered?
If someone was killed.
Like, I would need the context.
Oh, my God. Okay, sorry, what was your question?
Okay, so let's go back.
There have been politicians killed before, assassinated in the United States before, and we didn't call those insurrections.
Because they probably weren't a group of people trying to prevent the lawful execution of power in the United States.
Which is why I said I would need the context of...
Oh, like a group of people, like Trump's audience trying to circumvent the legal execution of the Constitution? That's like that context? Yeah.
Wait, so let's go back to Destiny. You made two points before, and I want to stick on those because actually good points we need to go over. Number one is Trump's full speech, the context of the speech, and what he actually said. And number two is the National Guard. So let's go back to Trump's full speech, which he started on, Glenn, but let's actually continue on that point. So Destiny mentioned that if you look in the context, he was actually inciting people to go there, not just peacefully. Would you agree that makes sense, or what's particularly your thoughts? Do you think he was just telling people to go peacefully and that was it?
Why didn't he tell them to go home when they were unpeaceful?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Why didn't you tell them to go home when they were rioting?
I'm trying to answer, but since you're talking, I can't. The way I interpret a speech is I look at the words that are spoken by the person delivering the speech. And when someone stands up in front of a crowd and says, I want you to be peaceful when you go on this protest that you're about to go on, that the Constitution permits you to go on, I take that seriously as an instruction given to his followers not to go there and use violence. And the attempt to suggest that, as I said before, phrases that politicians use in almost every political speech, like, let's fight like hell, and let's get our country back, things that Joe Biden said over and over in the 2020 campaign and many times before, that somehow that was like a secret code to go tell those people that what I really want you to do, even though I just told you to be peaceful, is in fact go and use violence?
Yeah, but Joe Biden never said we got to fight like hell or you're going to lose your fucking freedom, which is what Donald Trump did say.
It's something that you have to be delusional in order to find. And apparently that is not what the crowd heard, since the vast majority of the people who went to the Capitol, in fact, did not use violence. Only a very small number did.
So then the easy question, wait, on the back of that, just an easy question then. If he, first of all, also, no one is saying he's speaking a secret code. Everybody understood, apparently, loud and clear, to go to the White House and protest. That's why thousands of people, the Capitol building protest, that's why thousands of people went in. But the question would be, let's say that I grant all of that. Let's say every single thing you just said is true, and Trump really did just want them to peacefully protest. Why is it that when the rioting had started and people went to him begging him, please, Trump, please tweet and tell these people to go home, why would he not do it?
Well, he did do it. Your argument
after
is that
hours. No, don't lie, Glenn. Why are you lying? Why are you lying right now?
Can you shut up and let me answer your question?
Okay, go ahead. You can lie. Go ahead.
Just let him respond and then respond.
I think you've lied probably 100 times, but
really,
name
one.
You a liar. What I try and do is go instead.
What have I lied about?
Demonstrate what the actual arguments are, because I don't feel a need to constantly declare myself the winner.
To be clear, you haven't contested a single fact I've given because I've been correct on everything.
The reason that I believe that Donald Trump delayed telling those people to go home is because...
See, now here's the thing. He hasn't been able to refute a single fact that Destiny's given. And in addition to that, he's given absolutely nothing to prove anything that he's saying. You know, all he does is point at other examples of things that are unrelated, that don't prove anything. You know?
For a long time, he saw it as a legitimate protest, including people going into the Capitol. So if this entire case now rests on the fact that Donald Trump should have posted a tweet an hour earlier than he should have, and that way the riot would have dispersed after 2 hours rather than 3 hours, I think that illustrates...
An hour? How about 3 hours earlier, you dumbass? He should have done it immediately. As soon as he heard what was going on, as soon as he was watching on the monitors that people were breaking down those barricades, the bicycle racks, he should have immediately said, hey, everybody needs to calm down and back off. But he didn't.
The triviality
all right, Kepper.
We're actually having this discussion, these kind of reaches to try and say that the reason this was an insurrection and Trump tried to overthrow the government or seize power illegally is because he tweeted an hour after you think that he should have tweeted. That is, I mean, we're talking about the smallest...
No, Glenn, that's just part of it, bro. That's just one part of all the other shit. That's not the one thing that hinges on, you know, whether or not this was an insurrection or not, Glenn. You're an idiot, and I hope Destiny rips you apart and says exactly what I just said right now.
Details, because that's all you have.
You're mistaken. You're mistaken. When you say that it illustrates the triviality, that's not true. What it illustrates is how childlike Trump is, that our only expectation would be to pray for him to tweet to send his followers home. What his actual constitution, hours after the rioting had carried on. Donald Trump is the head of the National Guard that ought to have been deployed to D.C., and he failed to uphold in his duty to do that. Instead, he sat and he watched and he prioritized
They always say Nancy
his own
Pelosi didn't do
political
that.
career by telling Giuliani to make phone calls to congressmen instead of executing his duty as the commander-in-chief to deploy the National Guard to D.C. for hours. So you are right in one sense that begging for a tweet is a bit trivial, but what it really trivializes is Donald Trump's competency and the expectations of him even as a president. Because you're right, a tweet would have been trivial and it wouldn't have been enough. He should have taken charge as the president, and 20 or 30 minutes after violence happened, he should have called in the National Guard to stop it. He sat there for an hour after Ashley Babbitt died and watched it rage on before he finally made the tweet telling people to go home. How is that at all compatible with the president that wanted to be peaceful?
I have a question for you. So
47 minutes, my friends. 47 minutes into the show. We're gonna
dispersing the riots, and the riot would have only been 90 minutes or instead of 3 hours. But let me ask you this question. If
They dismissed the lawsuit.
Donald Trump were trying to lead a coup,
Disney is appealing it
in the United States, why didn't he go at all onto Twitter and tell those
DeSantis
people
is a
peacefully?
cunt.
Why didn't he go and say, you know what? We're currently seizing control of a corrupt government.
Disney
and
is
therefore,
wholesome
I
and
want even
awesome,
more of you to
and
come
fuck
to
Ron
Washington and
DeSantis,
go join
who
these
hates
patriots
everybody.
in engaging in violence.
And
Why did he
Disney
call
loves
out? Why did he
everybody.
tell them for the third time or the second time that day, don't use violence, be peaceful, and go home? That does not sound to me like the kind of statement that somebody intent on a coup would actually be issuing. I've never heard of a perpetrator of a coup before telling the crowd beforehand to be peaceful and then telling them 2.5 hours later again to go home and be peaceful.
It's because he knew he didn't have the support for it. It's so obvious. Because Donald Trump doesn't want to actually...
No law regarding cannabis. Cheers, everybody.
He was looking for an easy win, and he didn't get it, and as he saw that his supporters were failing, eventually, he kind of encouraged them when people were begging, please, tell him to go home. And then he starts tweeting out how Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done instead of telling him to go home. When it looked obvious that his little attempt had failed, he's not going to go out there with an AK-47 and start fighting with his supporters, and he doesn't want to leave obvious, clear evidence on Twitter. Guys, go coup the government. So, of course, he speaks, a little bit out of both sides of his mouth, and he eventually tells people to go home because he failed. It's so obvious. Such an obvious way to do it.
But he ended up doing exactly the thing that you said a real leader would have done. Your argument is that he did it like an hour late.
No, why do you keep saying 1 hour late? It was like 3 hours after the protest, the rioting had started, and that's a long time when he's getting, and it's also not just that he waited that time period, it's that when congressional leadership and congressional people were calling him and his family, he was making fun of them. What was it? I think it was even McCarthy that made the phone call where he was like, hey, what's going on with your followers out here? And Trump was like, looks like they're a little bit more mad about the rigged election than you are. Like, holy shit. Like, these are insane statements to be making, when instead Donald Trump is saying, hold on, let me get the National Guard over there. As the guy that's literally in charge of it, it's pretty crazy what's happening right now. I have been tasked, as part of my oath to the Constitution.
It's just so far removed from, like, what any country would ever describe as a coup, what any historian would describe as a coup.
Well, hold on, wait. You're wrong. Hold on. To be clear, I don't care about any other country. I care about the United States. This is my country. And insofar as what a historian would call a coup or a rebellion, again, you are on an island there. You don't think the Whiskey Rebellion was a rebellion. Not enough people died. You don't think that Fort Sumter would have been an insurrection without the Civil War after it. It's only retrospectively, determined. And also, you think that Donald Trump was an insurrectionist because he was in charge with insurrection, even though nobody from the Civil War was charged with insurrection. Glenn, you are completely on your own legally here with nobody in your corner.
Again, this is what you do. You're alone. Nobody agrees with you.
Talk about the number of people who were violent again, Glenn. Go ahead.
I'm going to let my statements speak for themselves about what I said about Fort Sumter and your imaginary Fort Sumter that you wanted me to analyze, and all the other things I said. What you just said, I believe, is a complete distortion of what I actually said, but I'm not interested in bickering about that since there's a videotape that everybody can watch and see what I actually said. Yes, the reason why we look at other countries, I don't know if you know this or not, but the State Department calls what happens in other countries all the time coups and insurrections. They condemn coups and insurrections. Under the law, we punish and impose sanctions whenever a government enters in a way that we call a coup or an insurrection. So we have created a long history of how this term is actually used. And this is what I was saying at the start of our discussion, which is that if all you want to do is have history begin with 2016 and Donald Trump and only look at the United States and partisan politics, then you will end up definitely catastrophizing everything associated with Trump. That's basically what the media has done for the last 7 years, is trying to pick Donald Trump as a never-before-seen evil. The reality, though, is that there is a long history which I think is critical to consult with and resort to, about how these words have always been used independent of Trump and prior to Trump, including by the American government that you're a part of, or that is your government because you're an American. There's a long record of how we use these terms, and there is no case in which we would resort to trivialities like the leader waited an hour too long to tell people to go home, or there was a protest that turned into a riot that delayed the certification of an election by 3 whole hours, and now we're going to impose sanctions on countries because we believe that there was some kind of an insurrectionary attempt that was serious in nature. Yes, if you just look at everything in isolation and say, as long as I can prove that some people on January 6th did something bad, which is that framework at the beginning, you tried to create this binary framework, then it means that I win, then yeah, that is, I agree. You can definitely prove that there were people who did bad things on January 6th. But when you look at it in the context, this context that you insist should be ignored, of historically how we've used these terms, both in our own history and in the history of other countries, it is a joke to try and apply those terms to this 3-hour riot.
Well, so Glenn, let me ask you a question about that. So, about the 3 hours, about waiting 3 hours to do the votes, they did it 3 hours later. So instead of a full insurrection, is that at least, could you say that's an attempt to prevent the peaceful transfer of power?
No, I think it would be a preposterous statement to draw from that conclusion. I think if Trump didn't walk out of the White House peacefully, as he did on January 20th, and had in the interim tried to incite or encourage more violence on the part of the people in the government and in the military who were loyal to him to engage in violence in a way that he really actually tried to stay in power, then I would be more open, more amenable to the idea that this was actually an attempted coup or an insurrection. The fact that political protests delay important proceedings all the time, that's in fact one of the purposes of political protests, is to be disruptive, to make the people in the government understand that there are people in the citizenry who are angry about a perceived injustice. That is often the goal of political protest. And if the goal of this protest was to delay by a couple of hours a certification that is ministerial in nature and that happened on the exact day the Constitution requires it to happen, if that's all we're arguing about, then to me it settles the whole case. That
what was the
is
goal of
just
the protesters?
A complete joke.
What were they there to
make
protest?
themselves heard. I believe they were there to
make themselves heard about what? What were they there to make themselves heard about?
About the fact that they believed that Donald Trump was the legitimate winner of the 2020 election, and that Joe Biden had and the Democrats had engaged in fraud in the election in order to win that election.
Right.
So they didn't
And
believe
that
in the
therefore,
So they didn't believe in the outcome of the election. They showed up to protest the outcome of the election. Violence was used, and they delayed the certification of the vote. Right? Do you disagree with any of those facts? All of those happened.
I do not. No.
Okay, which one of those four? Okay, we'll go over them again. Okay, you agree that they were protesting the results of the election.
I just said I don't agree. I don't.
No, he said he agrees with all of them.
He agreed. You agree with all four of those facts. Then what part of this is not an insurrection? What's missing?
The fact that the number of people who engage in violence and the way they engage in violence was very similar to how protests often turn into a riot. It is universes away from any kind of actual serious threat.
I agree.
To the power of the United States.
We agree that this was a riot. No one is denying this was a riot.
Right. Yes. It was a riot. Whenever
it was a riot.
It bring in violence into the political system, and one of the protesters, an unarmed protester, ends up dead, and police officers end up injured, it's a lamentable act. It's something we don't want to encourage. It's a bad thing. But this is so much to me like the inability to say that a foreign government or a foreign leader is doing bad things without then immediately calling them Adolf Hitler, and not understanding that there's a difference between a bad event or a bad person or a bad act and what the Nazis did. Like everything has to go to the furthest extreme.
No one is taking anything to a further extreme.
Was a bad, violent riot.
It was a riot. It was a riot.
Nowhere near
it was a riot.
Undermining or subverting the law, the system of law and order in the United States.
It did undermine it.
It intended to do so.
It did undermine it.
Intended to do that.
It was intended to. You said it. You said they went there to protest the election results. It turned into a riot, and they delayed the certification of the vote.
By every core element. By a couple of hours.
It doesn't matter. They still did it. That was the goal. That's what they did. They weren't that successful. That's not an argument that it wasn't an insurrection.
If you think that was the goal, then I think your argument is even weaker than I thought so the first time. If you believe their goal was to delay this ministerial act by Congress to make it happen at 4:30 p.m. instead of 1:30 p.m. or whenever it was scheduled.
Well, no, the goal was to delay it completely.
They intended to do, and that is what they succeeded in doing. Then the idea that that was an insurrectionary intent to delay a ministerial act, a ceremonious act, by a couple of hours so that they could have their grievances heard, then I think it's even a weaker case than I thought having listened to you for 3 hours the first time.
Okay, and that's fine. But historically, whether we're talking the Whiskey Rebellion, which used to be called the Whiskey Insurrection, whether we're talking about Shays Rebellion, whether we're talking about Nat Turner's Rebellion, whether we're talking about any of the insurrections that were protesting and insurrecting against the Fugitive Slave Act, whether you're talking about literally any of these things that were historically all understood to be insurrections that Congress was talking about in the 50s and 60s where they passed the 14th Amendment. These were all understood to be insurrections. They were all.
Were those coups?
We're not talking about a coup right now. We're talking about an insurrection, aren't we? Who's talking about a coup?
Coup is a word that we've been using from the very first second that we started talking.
I'm sorry. I believe that in the beginning of this, Eli. I'm sorry. Pull the tape. Were we talking about defining an insurrection or a coup?
I asked you for both. I started.
We haven't even gotten to coup yet. We can get to coup. If you want to get to coup, the electoral slate. That's a way easier argument for me. Okay, but if you're having
I love it, dude. Destiny's brutal.
Of course, because you're trying to obfuscate it. Yeah.
It's totally fine. So let me ask you. Do you think what happened on January 6th rose to the level of an attempted coup?
Firstly, I would say that,
bro.
to reiterate in the past,
Glad to see you're up and running again.
Insurrection is unique and ahistorical. Just to be
Stop
clear.
saying that because it's just it's so untrue and it's so irrelevant. Even if I were the only one who thinks it, it's not proof that I'm wrong. The idea that
I didn't
I'm
say
the
it
only
was
one who
proof.
thinks
I
that
didn't say it's
everyone
proof
in
that
the
you're
world
wrong.
agrees with you.
I'm not saying it's proof that you're
Ridiculous.
wrong.
Not
I'm just saying.
everyone on your side. Not everyone is on your side, Destiny. Even though I know you sit on a YouTube channel with Democrats and people who tell you that you are. There's a much bigger world on your YouTube channel.
So the coup part, if I were to look at coup, or call it a self-coup, I guess, since Trump was still in power, the coup part is going to be Donald Trump on 2 or 3 different forks. One is going to be trying to bully at least 7 different state legislatures or electoral bodies to change the results of their electoral votes, knowingly that he was working with false evidence, because every single person that he entrusted to gather data about voter fraud had told him prior to the statements he made about these things that the voter fraud wasn't real. That would be the first part. The second part...
Can you just answer first, is what happened on January 6th an attempted coup? I realize there's other things...
This is the... Yeah, I'm getting it. This is the culmination. The second part is the electoral slates scheme, where Donald Trump and his people basically contacted 7 different slates, or 7 different states, and got all these people involved in making and testifying to falsely being electors of these states to be sent to Congress. And then I guess the climax of that would have been in Congress, Donald Trump asking Pence, when he gets these fake slates of electors, to ignore the real electors, say that these particular electors, it's too hard to figure out what's going on, and then throw it to the House, to have the House essentially, because the Republicans were controlling the parts of the House they needed basically in order to elect Donald Trump as the president, for them to make a determination on the election. That part was an attempted self-coup, yes. Because he was... yes.
So you do think your argument is also that it's an attempted coup, not just an insurrection. I don't know why you got so
because the self-coup part, I'm explaining, because the coup part is fundamentally separate from the insurrection part. There were 2 different things going on that day.
All right, let me because I think it's a good point to kind of like summarize. We've been going almost 2 hours, which is like what we said was our kind of target goal. But so let me just tell you about all of that, my view of
No thanks, Glenn. Rather not. You guys, thanks for tuning in. I will see you on the next show. I'm at Nays Garden on Twitter. I will see you there. Peace.